Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 113 of ASBN Live. I'm Tulasi Sivalingam, the Manager of Events and Programming, and I'm grateful to our partners, JumpScale and One Light Global, for bringing together these incredible panelists who are on the ground during this crisis. It's now my pleasure to turn it over to Daniel Roth from JumpScale, who will introduce them.
Thank you so much, Tulasi and ASBN for One Light Global, for everyone who's tuning in on this this important day. We're 1 month into the war in Ukraine, and this is a pretty dire situation for lots of our friends and colleagues in Europe. So before we get into any of the content of today, I wanted to just ask everyone who's tuning in right now to take a moment of silence, just 3 deep breaths. So before we jump in, let's just do that. So just if you feel comfortable to close your eyes, that's appropriate. So we'll just take 3 deep breaths together from all around the world to honor all of those who are suffering, who have died in this conflict. Thank you, everyone, for being here again. My name is Daniel Roth. I'm one of the co-founders of JumpScale, and hosting this call today is deeply personal. My grandmother was born in Lvov, and I have felt a lot of pain from this time that this war has been going on. Because of that family connection. And I'm just so grateful that we can host this call, we can share ways that people are taking action and help connect people and build relationships in a good way. My more immediate connection to Ukraine came when I met Igor Konstantinovsky. Both he and I have a deep commitment to regenerative investing and supporting indigenous rights. And he's helped me over the last few years really start to learn about the modern Ukraine and not just the Ukraine of my grandmother's generation. So I'm so grateful for our relationship, Igor, and for the work you're doing on the ground that we're all going to learn more about this afternoon. I also want to thank Anastasia and Dima from 100% Life, one of the leading Ukrainian health organizations that's been working with HIV/AIDS patients and the public health community for many years now, and has really gone through a transformation to deal with the current situation. And I'm so grateful for both of your participation today. And also want to thank Jessica Blazer from Dar Charitable Foundation for joining us. They're doing some great work of mobilizing lots of partnerships and are doing a great job of pulling together funds and resources from medical supplies to capital to support important humanitarian work. So thank you all for joining us, and I'll turn it over to my co-host Zoe Wild from One Light Global.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you everyone for coming today. It's such an honor to be here with people that are working on the ground and working in the States to mobilize funds and materials to get to the people who need it most. Thank you, ASBN, for hosting also. My organization is called One Light Global, and we have been working with various refugee crises around the world. So it's very intimate to us, the challenges that are faced by the people that are forced to leave their homes due to war and persecution, and also struggles of the people that are there to try to support. So one of the issues that we've really been noticing in this particular crisis is this era of misinformation and how many people are confused about what's actually happening in Ukraine on the ground. Why is Russia invading? What's the best way to help? What are the organizations that we can trust to send our funds to, and how are they being used? So Igor and I have been talking a lot about the history of the situation, and he'll be delving into that today, as well as introducing you to people that are really making a difference daily on the ground. We'll also hear some of their firsthand experiences of living through this particular time in history, and really delving into the best avenues for how we can help. So Igor is a Kiev-based entrepreneur and impact venture investor, and he's been catalyzing positive systems in the fields of health, climate, food, education. And over the last month, has shifted entirely his focus towards fundraising to support Ukraine, as well as advising donors on fund placement within Ukraine. He's also been educating many of us on the complex history of this conflict and shedding light on the true motives for the invasion and why this is such a critical moment in history for all of us. So Igor, please share with us.
Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, Daniel. It's an honor to be speaking here today. And thank you everyone for taking the time to join this call, and for all your support energetically, financially, physically, and every which way you help. So thank you, everybody. Just really briefly about myself. As Zoe said, I'm an investor and entrepreneur. I've focused on impact investing in private equity, investing climate change, future of food, financial inclusion, and other things. So now I'd like to share a little bit of history on myself. So I was born in Ukraine in 1986, moved to the US, immigrated when I was 3 with my whole family, and grew up in the US and Europe, and then moved back to Kiev in 2013, actually just in time for the protests and the revolution of dignity, as we call it in Ukraine, against Russian-backed government in power at that time. This term, revolution of dignity, is another way of phrasing a concept called color revolution. It's a term used to describe various anti-regime, anti-corruption, anti-dictator protest movements worldwide. Revolutions such as the Arab Spring or the Rose Revolution in Georgia in 2003 are all examples of color revolutions. All in all, there have been just under 30 such revolutions over the last 30 years globally. Russia and some other authoritarian governments globally share the view that color revolutions are the products of plots by the United States and other Western powers, and pose vital threats to their public and national security. Narratives pushed on state media and in propaganda machines say that the US plans and implements systematically color revolutions in many places around the world, thereby exporting American values to these places. The export of American or European values of democracy, freedom, and rule of law are threats to many of these authoritarian regimes, and they're willing to go to great lengths to destroy these societal changes that happen gradually and span the minds of millions of people. In 2013, when the revolution of dignity broke out in Ukraine in response to rampant corruption, months into protests, the revolution culminated with the killing of 100 protesters by the government in power at that time. The next day, the president fled to Russia and an interim government was installed. Soon thereafter, Russia annexed Crimea in the south of Ukraine. Then in the east of the country, under the pretext of protecting civilian protests from violence and repression, both unfounded, Russia brought in unmarked troops, special forces, tanks, and artillery. The war basically was essentially officially started then in 2014 and continued throughout that year. However, the war never really stopped. Over the last 8 years, there's been constant shelling and deaths almost every day. All in all, 14,000 Ukrainians, civilian and troops, have died over the conflict in the last 8 years, and thousands on the Russian and occupied territory side as well. So fast forward from 2014 and the beginning of our conflict with Russia. In 2019, Ukraine had a presidential election, and our current president, Volodymyr Zelensky, won 70% of the popular vote, a landslide. His campaign promised the government to rid the government of corruption, establish peace in the east of Ukraine, modernize the government, and improve the economic prosperity of the country. The revolution of 2014 finally had a leader that represented its values and aspirations. So fast forward 2 years from his election, over the course of a few months, under the pretext of standard military exercises, Russia amassed approximately 190,000 troops along Ukraine's borders using Russia, Belarus, occupied territory, Ukrainian territory in the east, and occupied Crimea in the south as the launch pad for a potential invasion. As Russian troops took their positions, Russia issued a number of ultimatums to Western governments publicly. Russia demanded that NATO remove any troops or weapons deployed in countries that NATO entered after 1997, which would include much of Eastern Europe, including Poland, the former Soviet countries of Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, and the Balkan countries. All in all, 14 countries would have to remove NATO troops and bases, leaving them defenseless. The demands also included a ban on Ukraine entering NATO, among other security guarantees from the West. As the West was addressing these Russian ultimatums in mid-February, about 10 days before the war started, I ran across a defense think tank report from a think tank in the UK. And the title of the report was "The Plot to Destroy Ukraine." And as I read the report, I discovered basically a description of a covert Russian operation to dismantle the government of Ukraine, a government of a democratically elected government of a country of 44 million people. I read about teams of Russian covert agents gathering lists of Ukrainian government officials, activists, and supporters that it would be necessary to liquidate in order to seize power. About Russian agents that had infiltrated our government, disinformation campaigns to discredit the government, energy supplies being cut off to stir economic instability, and all kinds of hybrid warfare to weaken the public perception of the state. After reading this report, I realized that the ultimatums that Russia had made to the West about NATO withdrawal and other things were just a smokescreen and weren't real things that they actually expected the West to agree to. President Putin knew there would be no way to implement these ultimatums. They had been secretly planning the invasion of Ukraine for many years. After coming to this realization, I couldn't imagine the extent of what would happen in the coming weeks. Like myself, most Ukrainians understood that Putin would want to stop their progress of our country, to show his electorate back home that revolutions don't lead to anything, only problems, war, and destruction. Putin and the Russian government had already fought wars to the same in Chechnya in the late 90s, early 2000s, in Georgia in 2008, and in Syria over the last decade, propping up the dictator Bashar al-Assad. However, myself and most people I knew thought that there would be some bombing in the east, perhaps an attempt to extend the borders of the Eastern occupation, perhaps some kind of acts of terrorism, enough to scare investors out of the country, enough to scare tourists out of the country. Just the fact that there were 190,000 troops on the border of Ukraine pretty much had accomplished that already. Every investor I knew was kind of turning their backs on any projects in the country. And then we all realized that we were all very wrong. So on February 24th at about 4:30 a.m., I was sleeping in my house on the outskirts of Kiev. And I woke up to loud sounds going off. I was confused at first, didn't understand what was happening. And then realized that this might be an invasion. So I opened up my phone, checked the news, and sure enough, there was basically bombing happening all over the country, and it was all over the news. The bombing began by bombing the international airport in Kiev, other airports, military bases, infrastructure. And then within 48 hours, there were gunfights happening all over the country. Helicopters dropping off paratroopers in various cities, and special forces units landing in airports on the outskirts of Kiev. The plan that I had read about in the think tank report was actually happening. Russia was attempting to attack and liquidate the governments of Kiev, most large cities, and many administrative centers. The idea was that by taking out government leaders around the country, there would be no one left to command. The idea behind dropping bombs all over the country, while ineffective militarily, from a military perspective, would spread fear into the hearts and minds of the population. The massive numbers of troops and arms on the border was meant to scare our army into instant surrender. The Russian government planned to execute this plan within 3 to 4 days. They wanted to declare that some kind of coup or revolution had taken place on TV sets back home, since they denied for weeks their troops were even in the country, and the mission would be accomplished. The speed with which the operation would happen would catch Western governments off guard. Since they planned to execute President Zelensky, there would be no democratically elected government for the West to support. This would lead to confusion, division, and weak sanctions, and mission accomplished for Russia. Fortunately, the plan failed. Our army fought back heroically. Our president didn't flee, but stayed, despite enormous danger and numerous assassination attempts. Since then, all-out war has ensued. The Russian army has thrown everything they have at Ukraine, short of an atomic bomb. They have deployed almost all of their troops stationed on our borders into Ukraine. They have used weapons of mass destruction banned by various international conventions, and have resorted to indiscriminate bombing of civilians, residential buildings, maternity wards, hospitals, schools, and the list goes on. The number of casualties are hard to estimate, but in Mariupol alone, a city under siege, there are some estimates of up to 20,000 dead. The humanitarian catastrophe is immense, and as the conflict unfolded, I began to think about how I could help. I had a large network of friends and investors in the US and Europe, and I knew I could be effective in fundraising. I reached out to Dima and Anastasia, two friends who I've known for years, who lead an incredible nonprofit serving a few 100,000 patients in Ukraine, the organization called 100% Life. We spoke and started collaborating instantly. Their teams are in Ukraine, on the ground, working on critical supplies to critical locations, and I couldn't think more highly of them. I'm extremely grateful for what they do, and honored to be working with them. And so with that, I'd like to introduce Dima Sharanbey, the founder of 100% Life. Dima.
Dima, microphone. And hello, everyone. I will also help Dima with translation. Дима, можешь начинать?
Я вкратце расскажу об организации, да?
Dima will briefly tell about our organization, so you know our background.
Мы являемся самым большим фондом в финансовом человеческом смысле в Украине и в регионе.
We are the biggest foundation in terms of human capital and also financial resources and capacity, not only in Ukraine, but also in the whole region of Eastern Europe and Central Asia.
В нашем фонде, в наших проектах работает больше 3500 социальных работников.
All of our projects contain more than 3,500 social workers all around Ukraine.
Наша основная миссия нашего фонда – это борьба за жизнь и за права человека.
Our main mission is to fight for life and also to support human rights.
В среднем мы обслуживаем до 240 тысяч людей бесплатными услугами в год.
So annually, we cover more than 500,000 people all around Ukraine with social services annually.
2 года назад мы были признаны американским правительством лучшим партнером из 80 стран мира.
And 2 years ago, we won the nomination of a US government for the most trustworthy and most capable partner in among 80 other countries.
Наша инфраструктура работает по всей территории Украины.
Our infrastructure covers offices in all around Ukraine, in each and every region.
И когда война постучала в наш дом, вся эта инфраструктура переориентировалась на сопротивление.
And of course, when war knocked our door, we reoriented and reprioritized our mission and started the defense.
Я сейчас нахожусь в Киеве, в центральном офисе. Из центрального офиса управляем всей организацией по всей Украине.
Dima is currently in Kiev, and now he's speaking from our office, and he is coordinating from there whole of our team all around the world and all around Ukraine.
И для нас гуманитарная система помощи является очень важным составляющим элементом будущей победы.
Humanitarian aid is one of the key milestones for the success in this war, and it brings us closer to the victory.
Мы хотим на 100% обеспечить каждого бойца и каждого человека, который участвует в сопротивлении, средствами защиты его жизни.
So firstly, we and foremost, we want to support and guarantee that each and every personnel from army and also from the defense sector has all of the protective gear and protective equipment which is needed.
И у нас несколько направлений работы на данном этапе всего фонда по всей Украине.
And at the moment, we have few different factors of lines of our work throughout Ukraine.
Большинство наших сотрудников и членов организации вступили в войска и сами защищают Украину.
We have lots of people who joined the army of Ukraine and also territorial defense at the moment.
Я сам являюсь солдатом.
And at the moment, Dima himself is a soldier. He's a part of territorial defense.
И у нас наша территория работы заключается, мы работаем с армией, мы работаем с гражданским населением и работаем с правительством.
And at the moment, we work with three main groups: is army, is governmental institutions, and also civilians.
Для армии мы обеспечиваем средства защиты, это бронежилеты, каски и медицинское обеспечение.
And for army, we bring humanitarian, not only humanitarian aid, but of course armory, helmets, and all the necessary first aid.
Также мы организовали центр обучения для солдат по оказанию первой медицинской помощи. Он прямо у нас в офисе организован.
In our office, we also set it up the first aid training courses for the territorial members of territorial defense and army.
Также через систему Zoom мы обучаем людей базовым навыкам для людей, чтобы они понимали, как себя вести, когда они оказались на территории, где ведутся боевые действия. Это по всей территории Украины мы учим.
And also we launch virtual courses for everyone, how to act if your home or if the place where you live had the active phase of military invasion or active phase of war. So how people should act in that situation.
Для гражданского населения базовые программы, которые мы сейчас реализуем, это продуктовые программы и товарные программы.
And so firstly, when we speak about civilians, we implement two main programs. So the first one is, of course, food program and all of the necessary grocery supplies and the first need supplies.
Вторая очень большая программа – это миграционная программа эвакуации людей.
Secondly is, of course, evacuation of civilians.
И также мы создаем систему шелтеров по всей территории Украины, через которые проезжают все миграционные циклы.
So at the moment we are launching the project of setting up the shelters for people who are migrating and evacuating from different parts of Ukraine. So they have place where they can stay before they move further or cross the border.
И важно понимать, что все наши социальные работники продолжают оказывать помощь тяжелобольным людям дома.
And it's very needed to be emphasized that all of our social workers are continuing their work to provide social services for patients in need, especially patients from our key population groups, such as HIV positive people, people with tuberculosis, viral hepatitis, and other vulnerable groups.
Для правительства мы сейчас оказываем техническую помощь двум министерствам. Это Министерство здравоохранения и Министерство обороны. Помогаем.
And, if we speak about governmental support, we mean two main institutions, Ministry of Health, of course, and Ministry of Defense. Those are two main ministries whom we support.
Для Министерства здравоохранения мы помогаем в логистическом процессе по развозу всех медикаментов и оборудования по всей стране.
Okay. So basically, when we speak about the Ministry of Health, we mostly help them and assist with logistics and procurement of the medical supplies.
А для Министерства обороны мы на данный момент, они обратились к нам за технической помощью, чтобы мы им помогли выстроить систему закупок и поставок оборудования, которое надо для армии.
And when we speak about Ministry of Defense, we speak about the equipment, the necessary equipment which is needed for army. Дима, нам нужно чуть-чуть только сокращать,
Да,
потому что
все,
нас уже
да, окей, да. Тогда я озвучу приоритеты. Да, тогда я озвучу приоритеты.
Yeah, we will wrap up, and we also will now name a few of the main priorities for the support at the moment.
На данный момент товарные приоритеты – это бронежилеты, медицинское обеспечение солдата и гражданского человека. Это первая часть приоритетов.
So first main priority is, of course, armory and all the necessary equipment for the army, including medical first aid kits for army and also for civilians.
А вторая часть приоритетов для гражданского общества – это продуктовое обеспечение хотя бы сухпайками, а также логистическая поддержка их по вывозу их из горячих точек.
Yes, and when we speak about civilians, the priorities which we can name is, of course, food packages and also logistics and distribution of the necessary supply needs and evacuation. All that is connected to the evacuation of people, including shelters, which we already mentioned.
А третья часть приоритетов: мы хотим обеспечить всех социальных работников и медицинских работников в Украине базовыми технологиями, которые могут их защитить. То есть это бронежилеты не самого высокого порядка защиты, а второго и третьего.
Thirdly, we speak about social workers and health workers that we need to protect them, and we want to provide them necessary protective equipment, including armory, but not of the highest density like for army, but normal one which is used by police, for instance.
Я не буду сейчас озвучивать весь список медикаментов, которые нам надо.
I will provide it. Dima won't mention all the list of medical supplies which are needed and was requested by the Ministry of Health. I will provide you with that list a little bit later.
Но сегодня стал очевиден очень важный приоритет для Украины, не только для гражданского общества, но также и для армии. Это система доступа к интернету Starlink, которая, к сожалению, для нас возможно сейчас быстро закупить только в Америке.
And fourthly, which is very much important, and you can see the need of it all around Ukraine, is of course the access to internet. So basically, we're speaking about Starlink here.
Нам эти системы надо поставить в госпиталя, самые ключевые, которым нужен доступ беспрепятственный доступ к интернету и к связи.
We need to install all of the Starlinks into the hospitals, which are on the front line of the military aggression and active zone.
Нам их надо установить в координационные центры по миграционному процессу людей, чтобы обмен данными, куда мигрируют люди, происходил постоянно.
And of course, to the coordination centers, we should install the Starlink into the coordination centers, which are on the crossroads of people who are migrating from one region to another, or even crossing the roads.
А также очень важно их довести, доставить в города, которые полностью разрушены.
And of course, it's very much important to bring Starlink into the places which are currently the top, I would say, concentration of the military aggression, such as Mariupol, Chernihiv, and Kharkiv, for instance.
Да, вот так получилось, что у нас была одна система, и мы сегодня ночью его переправим какими-то дорогами в Чернигов, в котором просто нет никакой связи, а им нужен интернет.
And for instance, we had one of the Starlinks, and at the moment we have to give it and to transport it from Kiev to Chernihiv. So basically, we donate our Starlink to Chernihiv, so they have access. Zoya, I'm sorry, Dima, заканчивать.
Да, я прошу прощения, что занял время. Это общий экскурс того, что нам надо. И так получилось, что на сегодняшнее время в 6:30 вечера Starlink для нас становится важным приоритетом поставки этой технологии в Украину.
To sum up the priorities, we should say that Starlink and the internet access is one of the top priorities of the aid which can be provided from American community to Ukraine. That's it from Dima.
Всё.
Maybe
Всё.
just a few words from myself. If I can. Okay, just hello everyone once again. My name is Anastasia Deeva, and I'm the CEO of this amazing, absolutely fantastic organization, which was fighting with HIV, AIDS, tuberculosis, and Hep C for 20 years, and not only, but also advocating for human rights all around the region. And we were nominated for many different winning competitions, and we actually we are proven innovators, I would say. And now, of course, we changed and continued our priority, not only fighting with HIV, but also, of course, to distribute the humanitarian aid which is needed, and Dima brilliantly presented it. I would also say that at the moment, I'm IDP myself, internally displaced person, and I was staying in Kiev for quite a long time because this is my home. Kiev is my home, and I just became mother 10 months ago, so I had my baby in my hands, and I was partly on maternity leave when war started, and I decided, no, Kyiv is my home, I have to stay here. But of course, the reality is the following, that we all had to leave our homes. We can't be there at the moment, and we have to fight from all the positions which are spread now, not only in Ukraine, but also all around the world. And I want to say that our organization still remain all of the capacity to continue our work full speed, to improve it, to increase it, to implement more programs, and to make our portfolio even more diversified. And at the moment, we are ready to bring even more of the programs on the ground. And Dima also already mentioned what are the main directions which are open for you to help us and to assist us with, and will really help us to save lives. Thank you. I will be ready to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Dima and Anastasia. It's so inspiring how you've transformed this organization that was already had the infrastructure across Ukraine to you so quickly were able to transform that into war support. And just to see how many different avenues you're supporting of the front lines, displaced persons. And I think people often don't think how with refugees, you know, we still go on having the challenges that we had prior to war, right? Like health issues that need to be maintained and watched, you know, taken care of. And then that's just added to having to leave your home. And your story, Anastasia, is amazing. I mean, I can't imagine having a 10-month-old baby and having to decide whether to stay or to leave. It's incredible to have representation from Dima on the front lines, from you, and from Jessica, you know, really working from the US. Well, Jessica, why don't you speak to what DAR is doing from the US? what I was going to say is One Lake Global, we've really learned that the best way to support situations like this, there he is to support small organizations on the ground. The people on the ground always know what the highest needs are, know how to get the money and resources to the people that need it most. So with that, Jessica.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone here for having me on this call. And thank you for all of the support that everyone is providing to Ukraine. It's incredibly important. I'm the Director of Development at DAR Charitable Foundation. This is my side job, if you will. My day job is as a partner in a private equity firm called Sigma Blazer, which has an over 25-year history of investing over $1 billion in Ukraine. My family is originally from Ukraine. My parents immigrated to the States, so I'm first generation. And I've been going back and forth to Ukraine for work for many years. And my family, my friends, my colleagues are still there. So essentially, when the war started, much like with 100% Life, our entire private equity firm and our colleagues amongst our portfolio companies, including farms all over Ukraine and every region of Ukraine, became volunteers for DAR Charitable Foundation. So we get calls from our accountants saying, hey, we still have this other business to run. And we're like, we don't have time. We're only working on DAR. You deal with it. And so that's what we've been doing. We have been a nonprofit focused on Ukraine for 20 years now. And the focus mostly before the war, which started for us, in our opinion, like you guys said, in 2014. Prior to that, most of DAR's work was focused on orphanages, hospitals, as well as support of local artists. And when the war started in 2014, our executive director and our colleagues that worked at the nonprofit at DAR became frontline people. They volunteered to support for months at a time on the front lines in the East in Donbass. And our executive director herself was driving back and forth every week to provide supplies to the front lines. They didn't have food to eat, they didn't have clothing, so she would just pack everything in her car and go. And now that the war has expanded as much as it has, unfortunately, we basically put our capabilities on steroids and transferred all of our abilities within our private equity firm, Sigma Blazer, and our portfolio companies to be used directly for work for DAR Charitable Foundation and all of our partners there, including 100% Life. So we are focused largely on humanitarian aid, medical supplies from the States, pharmaceuticals, dry food rations for civilians as well as soldiers. And we've also partnered with police foundations around America to receive donated body armor and helmets. These are decommissioned or surplus items that we have been generously given by policemen. It's been incredible to see the turnout for that. And we're able to ship that across. So it's purely donated and it's just incredible. Our current state is that we've been able to, with our other supporting entities like Sigma Blazer and other groups that we are in our workspace, we've raised about $2 million at this point. We've provided over 4,400 pieces of body armor and helmets to territorial defense on the ground in Ukraine. We've provided over 3,200 pounds of medical supplies, over 1,500 pounds of pharmaceuticals, and we're in the process of ordering our first 60,000 dry food rations to be sent to combat zones for the soldiers. So that is what we're doing, and we are open to working with everyone that we can. And one of the other main things, I'll just wrap up quickly, one of the other main things that we are focused on is the story of people that remain. So like you heard Nastya's story, there are real people that remain with their daily lives. And Nastya has an incredible story, and it's an incredibly lucky story. Many people do not have that luck. We are working on a witness testimony project to shed light on what's happening, especially in places like Mariupol, but really all over. We're hearing stories of women being raped, of children dying of thirst, of elderly people dying of heart attacks, gangrene because they can't get enough insulin, things like that. And so we are dedicated to making sure that those stories are heard and doing whatever we can. So thank you to everyone for your support, and I'll provide a link to our fundraising site in the chat.
Wow. Well, I'm just really in awe of all the work and love that all of you are putting in to this moment. And I know folks who are here with us, who are on this call, are grateful to learn what's going on and who can they trust. And the rest of our time this afternoon is for questions from the audience. We've been collecting questions through Facebook for the last week or so, but if you've got any questions for any of the panelists, please use the Q&A box down at the bottom bar of your Zoom window, and we'll start getting into those in just a moment. So please let us know. We would love to focus on what you're interested in if you're joining us. But perhaps while we're doing that, Zoe, do you want to kick it off with some of the questions we got already?
Absolutely. And really just feeling for, Jessica, it really hits home. The stories you're saying of real people on the ground, that's what this is all for. That's why we're all gathered here today and using this time away from our normal jobs and lives to bring attention to these people that are just like all of us. We'll start with this one. What is the most beautiful or valuable part of your culture of being Ukrainian that you want to share with us and preserve?
Do you address this question for someone precisely, or?
For anyone who feels inspired to answer.
Дима, что самое красивое в нашей культуре, что тебя вдохновляет больше всего? I will answer, of course. У тебя микрофон.
В Украине
Да, конечно, нашей культуры.
теплота, мягкость
Softness
и добро.
and kindness. And as for me, I think it's diversity actually, because we are extremely diverse culture. We can embed so many beautiful and sometimes funny things, and that actually provokes us to be very much creative. And I think that Ukrainians are super creative. So basically, I think that diversity is something that is absolutely about us.
I'll just give a quick thing from an American Ukrainian perspective. When people ask me, are you American? I say, no, I'm Ukrainian, even though I'm first generation born in the States, because I'm so proud of that heritage. And for me, it's the grit. To see what this country has gone through from the end, even during the Soviet Union, the way that it was exploited, and to what it has become now is a miracle. It didn't have the same opportunities that some of the other countries had, Poland and the Baltics, that were able to become part of the EU already. But it has this core incredible grit, and it has natural resources up the wazoo. It's known as the breadbasket of Europe. It has minerals and oil and gas and everything. And there's a determination to remain free and sovereign and to use those resources for good. And I truly believe that they will be used, the country will be rebuilt, and it will be beautiful once again.
Thank you. I think the entire world has been inspired by the resilience of the Ukrainian people and the determination. It's been incredible to watch. It makes me proud and connected, perhaps for the first time in my life, to my Ukrainian grandfather. It's really amazing to watch. Someone in the live audience just asked, as a mom with a 19-year-old son, the thought of evacuating and leaving my child behind truly hits home and breaks my heart. I pray for your country and its people daily. Can you speak to the evacuation situation? Are the people who want and need to leave able to get to safety? And besides Poland, where are they being welcomed?
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
can thank you for the question. If you don't mind, I can start and comment. So basically, I think that the most difficult phase of evacuation for like general population, when we don't speak about the Mariupol, Kherson, Kharkiv, and Chernigiv, we are of course first days of the war, because the traffic was really heavy, and of course because of the general mobilization, which is absolutely needed in our country, which means that all of the men had to join the army or territorial defense, and they are not allowed to cross the border. Created a very hard situation for lots of mothers who had kids of different age and different situation and abilities, and they had to literally sometimes even, well, I can say barefoot, cross the border with the children in their hands, because their husband stayed on the border and they had to walk all of this long road on their own, with sometimes with their backpacks only. So of course it's not only about Poland, it's also about Hungary, it's about Slovakia, it's about Romania and Moldova, because those are the countries which are on the borders of our country. So basically people we are trying to evacuate not only to Poland but also to these countries. At the moment it's really hard to speak about internal evacuation, because as you may see from the news, or I hope that it is broadcasted, because it's very much important that Russian soldiers and Russian army failed to make humanitarian corridors and evacuation corridors. So we face the situation when people who want to leave the city and who even have, let's say, an opportunity or had in transport, they were just being shooted, even though if the car had the sign children. And there were so many of the situations which our volunteers, NGOs, and of course police, SBU, and all of the rest of our defense sector are trying to factualize. So basically they try to get this information to make the protocols and then to appeal to the court. But I mean, it will be later, but now when we speak, we are just speaking about real deaths in front of our eyes when we speak about evacuation. So basically, I think it's the external evacuation now is a bit easier, because they were logistics that was created in the borders for Romania, Moldova, as I mentioned, Hungary and Poland, which you mentioned before. But the most severe situation is with internal evacuation at the moment. And that is why Dima mentioned mobile shelters. So basically we have some places where people can rest a little bit, can have some food or water or what else. Yeah, over.
Thank you. We have another question from the audience from Amy. She says, thank you all for sharing your experiences and for your bravery. A question for Igor and Jessica. We have been talking about ways to donate and provide critical humanitarian aid. You are both impact investors. Is there a role for impact investment at this stage, possibly supporting humanitarian tech companies on the ground or food producers, media, etc.?
That kind of impact investing on the ground entails kind of commercial operations, you know, some kind of business, and it's really tough to perform kind of humanitarian aid and deliver all these goods and supplies in a business fashion. There's a number of efforts to create tech products that can help with coordination with refugee placement in countries in Europe and things like that. And they're all being created on a kind of a pro bono pro bono. So I've seen a number of examples of technology being created and used to solve problems, of a number of different NGOs being formed to solve problems. But I haven't seen so many examples of investing proper to solve problems yet. But it's still early. We're only a month in, so perhaps those things like that will emerge. But for the most part, it's been kind of focused on nonprofit.
Yeah, and if I
Jessica,
could
do you have
chime in
anything to add to that?
there. Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree. I can tell you that from our own portfolio companies right now, they've all shifted to humanitarian aid as well. So everybody that's left is trying to do their best. For example, our farmers are trying to hide their agricultural equipment because that's been targeted by the Russians. And it's about to be time to harvest. So it's, you know, they're trying to focus on that, but at the same time, they're organizing civilian evacuations from their local towns and things like that. So right now, I would say is not necessarily there's not a lot of opportunity for impact investing because the focus is so much on safety, life, and humanitarian aid. There will absolutely be an incredible amount of opportunity for impact investing when we are able to start rebuilding this country, when the Russians leave this sovereign nation. There will be huge amounts, and it will be very necessary to get all the support possible. And it will be an incredible opportunity for the country to rebuild itself in a new sustainable way that it was trying to do anyway. So there certainly will be time for that.
Thank you. I imagine also that it really plays to all of the fields in which you're already impact investing. Part of the reason for that, part of the motive for all of those areas of impact investment is to prevent wars like this in the future. Let's see. Could you speak a bit to the alternate narratives that are in the media around the conflict in Eastern Ukraine, anti-Semitism, and anything else that you might like to share with Americans as people who have lived so close to Russian propaganda for decades?
Sure, I can say a few things. I'm sure we all can, but I mean, the Russian kind of propaganda machine is immense. It has television stations around the world, Russia Today, for example, and a number of other ones. It's meddled in U.S. elections, and so quite powerful. So a lot of these narratives that people have either heard or read, things like anti-Semitism in Ukraine. Our president is Jewish, and a number of the heads of the government are Jewish. Things like a Russian narrative is that the Russian language is kind of repressed in Ukraine. That's not true. I don't speak Ukrainian. I live in Kiev, and I have absolutely no problem. Never heard anybody criticizing me for speaking only Russian and not speaking Ukrainian. So there's specific narratives that somebody would like addressed. More than happy to do so. There's typically an explanation and answer for. Oh, sorry, I forgot my video. For any of these alternate narratives.
What I think is particularly concerning is the alt-right in the US that is picking up on some of these narratives, like Tucker Carlson and a lot of Fox News. It is terrifying. I have a lot of friends that are in the House of Representatives that are senators of this country that are Republicans, and they don't hold those beliefs either. And yet they can't get rid of these ridiculous comments by alt-right people. And so it's very important that we shed light on the truth, and we continue to push that forward.
And maybe I can just jump in and to complement two speakers that actually we are the organization which is dealing with the most vulnerable key population groups, which are very much marginalized. We are talking about people using injected drugs. We are talking about the whole LGBTI plus community in Ukraine. And I can say that we do not see those factors of how to say, of violation of right. It is in, I mean, it is in place, of course, like in each and every country all around the world, but Ukraine is super much democratized and very tolerant in every way, and for all of the groups of people and ethnicity as well.
Thank you. What do you see as the best case scenario for how this crisis concludes? What gives you hope?
Can I translate it to Dima? Because it can be interesting for him. Вопрос по поводу сценариев. Как ты думаешь, какие могут быть сценарии всей этой ситуации и какая, как это сказать, момент для надежды, да, Игорь, правильно?
Войны? Да, войны?
No sugarcoat.
Да. Ну, во-первых, мы победим.
So first of all, we will win. And we are winning actually already. That's important.
И я постараюсь очень кратко, но лаконично объяснить. Я думаю, на этом сейчас звонке у нас находятся люди, которые точно понимают, что такое инвестиции, они понимают, что такое риск инвестиций, они понимают, когда они кому-то доверяют какие-то ресурсы, и люди чем-то рискуют.
I'll try to be brief, and I'm totally assured that today we have a community of people who do realize what is investment and what is the value of investment, what is the risk management, and so on.
И я думаю, для каждого, который находится здесь, и для каждого человека, который делает попытку инвестировать в Украину и помочь Украине,
and for everyone who is here and who wants to invest and trying to invest in Ukraine,
это очень уникальный опыт, потому что вы впервые будете инвестировать в людей, которые готовы умереть ради своей цели.
And it is a unique experience for you because you will be the first ones who will invest into people who are ready to die for their freedom and for their values.
Это не теоретический риск, это та цена, которую они готовы заплатить за ту мечту и цель, ради которой они идут.
And it's not some theoretical risk. It's actually the key value and key dream, which is which is the main guiding star for these people, for us, Ukrainians.
Это невероятно смелая нация.
Да, Игорь, говори. Игорь, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, and these values, these people are ready to die for, basically.
Yes.
И мы для себя четко здесь все поняли, что Российская Федерация уже проиграла на самом деле по одному простому факту. Весь мир узнал настоящее лицо этой страны, и это уже первая победа.
We believe that Russian Federation has already lost because the whole world finally realized their real face. So basically, they saw who they are.
Второе, что все поняли в мире, что эта маленькая страна никогда не отступит.
Это маленькая страна, ты про Россию?
Украина против России, да.
Okay. And secondly, I was just confused. And secondly, everyone understood that Ukraine will never lose in this fight, even though our size in terms of territory is smaller, even though we're smaller.
И, конечно, мы точно понимаем, что победит не только Украина, победит весь мир.
And we do realize that this will be the victory not only of Ukraine, but of the whole civilized, may I say so, world.
И я думаю, самое, ну как это сказать, сильное в мире оружие – это мотивация людей, которые готовы умереть за то, что они любят.
And we do believe that the main motivation is, еще раз повтори, пожалуйста. Это мечта, за которую могут люди умереть.
Да, да. Самое сильное в мире оружие — это не ядерное оружие, это не войска и, наверное, не пушки, а это мотивация людей, которые готовы умереть за то, что они любят.
The most powerful weapon is not nuclear, is the motivation and the dream which people are ready to die for. Our freedom.
И сегодня Украина пропитана этой мотивацией.
And today Ukraine is absorbed and fulfilled of this motivation.
Наш план простой — это победить. И независимо от того, сколько мы потратим на это времени, сил, жизни, всего, мы дойдем до этой победы.
Our plan is very simple, is to win. And we will win in any case with any steps we need to take. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
Героям слава.
Would anyone else like to answer that question? In that case, we have one last question from the audience, which was about PPE. Is anything being done to supply PPE to Ukrainians? I often see clusters of people without protection. And also, where is Starlink necessary? You had spoken to that before, Stasia. Is anyone providing PPE?
So I can tell you from our knowledge working with our distributors and suppliers in the States, we have a lot of people that are trying to offload all of their PPE. I'm assuming you're talking about gloves and masks and things like that, hand sanitizer. We just got a call today that somebody has 50 pallets of hand sanitizer that they'd like to donate. And while that's very helpful and we are providing those supplies, they are not priority right now. Priority right now are things that literally will save people's lives. Tourniquets are considered the #1 lifesaver of Ukraine right now. Tourniquets, body protection, helmets, hemostatic agents, so gauze or powder that can stop bleeding. Those are the priorities, and it's nice if things are clean, but the priority is to stay alive.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree. And I just wanted to say that when COVID just shoot, we were the first organization in Ukraine who started to procure and provide the full scale, let's say, volume of the PPE for doctors and also for social workers. So basically we do not have, our organization at least do not have problems with that, but we totally agree that now is PPE is something secondary because we really need helmets, we really need tourniquets. Jessica, you're absolutely right. So I just can compliment and just say that we should add access to internet to that list too. So please provide some Starlinks and we will install them in the most needed hospitals and coordination centers. Thank you.
We're at the top of the hour.
Потому что у тебя микрофон. I'm sorry, Dima is saying something? Да, скажи, Дим.
Нам надо минимум 100 штук вот этих боксов Starlink, а если будет больше, это будет просто фантастика.
Dima said that we need minimum of 100 Starlinks. If it will be more, it will be amazing.
We're at the top of the hour. So if people are able to donate, it sounds like Starlinks, tourniquets, those are the greatest needs. What is the best way that they can donate to both of your organizations?
We provided if I may say, we provided the link to our website, open requisites and bank details and also PayPal, etc. But we will also be glad to mention that we have the cooperation with DAR. So basically, if there's any need of financial consultation in that regard, we are open to discuss it.
Yes, so we are providing support. So for Americans that want to make tax deductible donations to DAR, if you make a note with your donation that says that you would like it to go to 100% life, we are providing that via wire transfer free of charge straight to 100% life. If you'd like to donate to our efforts, you can just donate to DAR. and you don't need to make any notes there. But please, if you are interested in donating to 100% Life through our vehicle, make sure you make the note so that we can make sure your grant goes to where you'd like it to go. Our link, which Zoe just posted as well, is www.standwithukrainefund.org.
Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to read this one note from Bradley. Your courage and humanity is inspiring and humbling. We will offer what we can to help and share links. Stay safe and send love and hope for peace, for the refugees on the unarmed road of flight, and for each and every underdog soldier in the night. We gazed upon the chimes of freedom flashing. Thank you, everyone, for attending today, for sharing your personal stories, for teaching us the history of this current crisis, for all of the work that you're doing, for everyone who's donating even $1. We salute you. Thank you so much. We'll be sending a follow-up email with all of the links and information to these organizations. And you can continue to send questions if you like, and we will answer them via email or online. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time today.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Wow.